Well, good morning, everybody. I didn't expect to be back with you so soon, but I've been pondering something for a couple days and I thought I'd make this video while it was fresh in my mind. So I came across an article yesterday as I was cruising around. Um, my sister, who I'm very close with, has been out west for a couple of weeks. And previous to that, she was sick for a couple of weeks. So I haven't seen her in about a month. I told you that I moved up here to the Richmond area of Virginia about 3 months ago to be closer to her and her family. Well, with the loss of her not being around, I have found myself pretty much alone for about a month. Not only her being gone, but we had some really horrendous weather here and had an ice storm that literally locked me housebound for 15 days. I couldn't even get out to get groceries. I had managed, with the help of the landlord, to clear a 1 foot path out to an area where the dog could use the bathroom and then come back in. And that was the extent of any exercise or movement that I had for 15 days. When I ran out of food, I had Walmart deliver it, only they couldn't get it down the little hill to where my apartment is. So he kind of had to send the packages down the ice hill, and I tried to catch them at the bottom and bring them in. All in all, it was really not good for my mental health. And I found myself struggling with things that I shouldn't be struggling with. I was struggling with being in the Word. Now, that doesn't make sense to me because when things go wrong, you would think that would be the first thing you would do is you would turn to prayer and you would turn to the word and you would try to get into it and keep yourself afloat. Only that's not what I did. I binged old Heartland episodes on TV and watched enough news to keep myself up at night. So by the time that this video is playing, it's been almost a month since I've seen my sister. It is now raining and the snow is all but gone. There's still some around, but I'm starting to get back emotionally and spiritually to where I was. Anyway, all that to say, as I was binge watching YouTube yesterday, I came across a video put out by a gentleman who said, "Are you where you thought you would be at this point in your life?" And then he said, if you were to go back into your 20s and 30s and to look ahead, would you see yourself where you are now? I thought about that and I actually paused the video to think about it just long enough to say, heck no, there's no way I thought I would be here. I got married my first time at 19. I stayed married for 33 years to a man that was basically a rageaholic. And I gave it my best shot, but it became too abusive and I had to leave. I then married my second husband just about a year and a half, maybe 2 years later, and he was the love of my life. We went through a rough time because of the economy and both lost our jobs, ended up moving into a motor home and lived there 8 months before securing jobs and trying to get on with our future. We finally got to the point where we were working hard and we bought a house. And he told me that we would never have to move again. We were finally settled. He then died 3 weeks later. I asked my daughter and her three kids if she wanted to move into the house with me so that I could help her out. And I spent the next 14 years helping to raise those children. I don't want to go into a lot of what happened with that relationship, but let's just say it was not a healthy one for me. And the kids were not given the discipline that they needed, and they lacked the respect that I thought I should have. I made the very painful decision a year ago to move out of that home that I had helped her purchase, and I moved into a small trailer with just enough furniture to get me by. The last year has been about me getting healthy emotionally, of learning how to take care of myself. and of suffering the loss of so many people in my life. This last blow of losing my grandchildren and my daughter, who did not understand why I did not want to take care of her anymore, was so painful that I wasn't sure I would survive. A week after I moved out of her house, I had to get rid of the golden retriever that I absolutely loved. He was 80 pounds, and I had ripped my shoulder in 3 places, and I could no longer have the strength to take care of him. So I rehomed him to a woman that thankfully has taken very good care of him, and he's living his best life now. All that to say that all of this ran through my head when he, in that video yesterday, said, "Are you where you thought you would be?" And I said, "Heck no." I don't spend a lot of time feeling sorry for myself, mainly because it doesn't do me any good. But I do spend a lot of time with the pain of the loss and all the losses that I've had over my life. So when somebody comes right out and says, "Are you where you thought you would be? And how are you handling it?" I had to stop and think about it. He asked in the video, "Do you find yourself angry with God?" And that was unequivocally no, absolutely not. My relationship with the Lord is such that I trust him, even though I don't like where I'm at. I find myself in a place of trust. Sometimes over this last year, I have cried out in such deep despair and crying out that I didn't know if I would make it until the next day. The reason I'm saying all this is because, again, I say it all the time. I'm not alone. I'm not the only person that has ever suffered. And if you are watching this, you have had those times, whether it be through your own disobedience or whether it be through someone else's disobedience or whether it be out of choices that didn't go right, where you have just found yourself just questioning, what the heck happened? How did I get from where I was to where I am now? And more importantly, how do I carry on? How do I continue on? As I continued listening to his video, he said some things that made sense to me. And then as I was looking around again, I found a story that honestly I had never heard before. And now I can't tell you how many times I've read through the word, but this is one of those stories that just, there was a zippity doo dah and it was there and then it was gone. And I had never given it much credence or thought before. So I wanted to turn there today and read that quick story because I think it goes somewhere that may help you if you are struggling with, why am I where I'm at? And this story is found in the book of 2 Kings, chapter 6. It's only 7 verses. Now the sons of the prophets said to Elisha, "Look now, the place where we live near you is too small for us. Please let us go to the Jordan River and let each man take from there a beam for a building and let us make a place there for ourselves that we can live." And he said, "Go ahead, go." And then one said, "Please be willing to go with your servants." And he answered, "I shall go." So he went with them, and when they came to the Jordan, they cut down some of the trees. But it happened that as one was cutting down a beam, the axe head fell off into the river, and he cried out and he said, "Oh no, my master, it was borrowed." The man of God said, "Where did it fall?" When he showed him the place, Elisha cut off a stick and threw it in there and made the iron, the axe head, float. He said, "Pick it up for yourself." So he reached out with his hand and took it. Well, I read that and I thought, what the heck is that doing in the scripture? Why is that there? What are we supposed to gain from reading that? So I did some research and I've come up with some things, and this is just me. And the first one I'll touch on is Elisha himself. Elijah was the type of person, and we can see it here, that he listened to the people. He listened to those that were around him, and not only listened, but he cared. He didn't just say, oh, well, too bad for you. Just use somebody else's axe. No big deal. He didn't. He immediately swung into gear to see how can I help this man? And then he provided the miracle. God was with Elisha. That was obvious. But God chose Elijah at this moment to solve that man's problem. So before we go looking at how he solved it, I wanted to talk about the man. Now, the man was someone who looks as if he had been dealt a poor deal. It was someone that maybe was looking at his life and thinking, this didn't go exactly as I planned, and I'm not thinking I should be in this place. I'm following this prophet. I'm out here doing the best I can, and yet everybody else is cutting down trees, and I don't even have an axe. I don't have enough to even take care of myself. Have you ever been in that position before where you just stop and think, I'm not enough? I don't have enough. I'm looking at the bills and there's too many. I'm looking at the things that are overwhelming me and I'm thinking, I can't do it. And that's where this man was at. But I didn't hear him sitting down at the water's edge and saying, I'm just going to wait here while you guys build the house. He borrowed an axe. He borrowed an axe so that he could get in there and do whatever he had to do. And I think that's our first learning from this. We may not have it all together. We may not have all the resources that we need. But what we can do is we can do what we can do. And in this case, it was the man who borrowed the axe. I know that there's been several times that I've gone without things that I thought I needed, but God has always provided a way for me to get those things done, even without that. Well, this man, I also think from learning and reading this story, is that this was a man who decided that he had scruples. He was working as hard as he could. He was slamming that axe down so hard, trying to get that wood separated, that the axe head just literally flew off. Now, I have done a little bit of cutting of wood, and I know that you have to have tremendous power behind that axe to have that axe head fly off. But it not only flew off and landed at his feet so he could pick it up. No, it went into the river, in the deepest part of a tumultuous river, and it sunk to the bottom. And here was the man standing on the edge. And what did he say? His first reaction was, oh no, I had borrowed that. That tells me a lot about that man's character. He was worried because he thought, how am I going to pay back this precious commodity that this person has loaned me? So he was distraught. To the rest of the woodcutters around, I doubt if they even stopped cutting. They were busy out there. They were sweating, they were chopping, and they were doing what they needed to do. And probably nobody really noticed that this poor man's axe head had gone into the river. So the axe head is in the middle of the river. The man is standing on the side and he's like, now what am I going to do? The last resource I had to try and be a part of this project, the last thing I had going for me here is now at the bottom of the river and I have no way to pay this back. So he went to Elijah and he basically said, Master, I don't know what to do. I've lost my axe head. It's down in the river. What am I going to do? It's a borrowed axe. Now, to us, it's not a big deal at this point because an axe is an axe. But to him, it was a very important tool that could not be replaced. It reminds me of a few weeks ago when I borrowed my brother-in-law's car to go and pick up a chair that I'd purchased off a marketplace. And he gave me the keys, and it was one of those where you push a button and it starts the car by itself. And I didn't even know how to open the trunk. There were so many weird buttons on it, and the car was beyond me. And I was terrified. And I only had to drive 4 miles each way from his house to pick up this chair. But I was terrified. I kept thinking, what if something happens? What if I'm in an accident? What if I wreck his car? What if this? What if that? Because to me, it was beyond the point where I could actually do anything to fix it if anything went wrong. So I was just praying that I would get back to his house with the chair, which I did. But it reminded me of that as I was thinking about this man. To him, that axe represented something that he could not repay, and he knew it. So he went to Elisha, and Elijah's first thought was not just go help them stack the wood that's there, or go do something else. No, he said, where did you lose it? And the man showed him, it's right there in the deepest part. And he said, okay. And Elisha took a stick and threw it in, and it stood up straight, and the axe head floated to the top. A lot of people said it was swimming up to the top. I don't know how it got to the top, but if you know anything about iron, you know that it does not float by itself. So this was a miracle that God did through Elijah for this man. And then Elijah, instead of just saying, there it is, I'll go get it, he said, go out and retrieve the axe. He allowed the man to be a participant in getting the axe back. Why is that so important? It's important because the man needed to be part of this restitution. The man needed to do something in order to feel as if he had been a part of it, even though he knew the gift was from God. Sometimes when things go wrong, we don't want to just sit there and say, please bless me, please make it all right. And then we just sit there and have the blessings flow upon us. No, what we want to do is we want to be a participant, however that is. It's why sometimes when you see a homeless person on the side of the street, they're not saying, just give me food. They're saying, do you have any work? Because they want to contribute. And it's innate in all of us to be able to do that. And so that's what this man did. He went out there and he got the axe head back, and he was able to continue. Now, what the heck does that have to do with us? I think plenty. Going back to that story that I had read with the man who said, are you where you thought you would be? That man never thought he would be going up to his waist trying to retrieve an axe head in the middle of a tumultuous river because it had floated to the surface. But I can guarantee when he got back to the shore, he came back with a fresh faith that he did not have when he was just chopping the wood. He learned so much from that small interchange with Elisha, and with the Lord and with the axe head that it changed him. And I think that he came away more confident in himself, in his abilities, and in the Lord who he knew was taking care of him. One of the things that it said in that story was that he was able to see God acting on his behalf. Well, I think as I go back to the man's question, are you where you thought you would be? His next question as a follow-up was, are you further ahead spiritually than if you had stayed on that same path? Are you praying more? Is your walk deeper with the Lord? Then he used the story of Joseph, who Joseph had it all, and he had been given dreams, and he knew he was going to be a person of great power and of authority, and everything was going to go right for him. And he ended up at the bottom of a well, and he got sent to jail, and he spent 2 years there. And I'm sure that Joseph over that time said, well, I didn't expect that to happen. It's like the person I was talking to a month ago, and we both graduated the same year from high school, and we were talking, we are very close. And he said, I never expected to get Parkinson's. And that was a deep revelation from him as to he was asking himself that same question. If I had looked at 20 or 30 years old, would I have seen myself now? Absolutely not. And most of us, if we look back at those early years and the early decisions, the first thing we see is, boy, I wouldn't have done that. Sometimes they have these little things on the Facebook and said, if you could talk to yourself at 19 years old, what would you say? And my answer always is, don't do it. But there's so many people that are like looking back, but we don't have that luxury. But what I want to leave you with today is a couple of things. First of all, nothing that has taken place in your life is a surprise to Yahweh. There is absolutely nothing that his hand has not been in, even in your times of disobedience, even in your times of running from him, even in your times of heartbreak and despair. You have never been out of his grasp. And in Genesis, it tells us in 39, but the Lord was with Joseph, and he was with you, and he is with me. And I know that if everything had gone according to my plan, I would not be where I am today with the Lord. Even this last year, while I lived with my daughter and her kids, that was my focus. While I lived with my second husband, the love of my life, he was my God. He was my focus. But through all of the things that took place after that time, I can now sit here today confident, knowing who Yahweh is and what he means to my life. And he cares about the little things. The axe was a little thing to that gentleman, but yet Yahweh stepped in and solved the problem. And I am telling you today, he will step in and solve yours as well. But you need to trust him. It does you no good to go back and to look at what happened before, or to think, if I'd only done this, if we hadn't moved here, if I hadn't spent that. No, today is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. And that's what you need to do. And that's what you can do by looking at this little verse, these verses about the axe. And that's what you can do as you look ahead and say, where would I be? I know without a doubt that the Lord has used each and every circumstances. And the times that I cried out to him when I thought I was alone and I wept beside my sofa, I felt the mighty presence of God himself put his hand on my head and say, you are my betrothed. You are my daughter. I've got you. And those are things that you just don't learn until you have to learn them. So I wanted to share that today because if you are struggling with choices you've made, with where you're at, or even where you're going to go, you can rest assured that there is a God that knows that your axe has fallen into the deep end. There is a God that understands what it means when you say it was borrowed. I didn't even have one of my own. And there is a God that is willing to come to your rescue and to raise you up out of that place of despair. I wanted to post this because it ministered to me, and I hope that it ministers to you. If it did, please leave a comment below and let me know. And I would like to pray for you. I feel like I can't do a lot of public ministry right now, but the thing I can do is post these videos as God gives them to me, and then to pray as needed. So that's my commitment to you. If you put something down there, I will pray for you. I hope that you continue to have a good day. Go back and read that and ask the Lord, how would my life be the same if it had turned out the way I wanted? And what growth have you shown me and granted to me because of your mercy in my life? Have a great afternoon.